The rancher had lived alone for so long that the silence of the plains had become the only companion he trusted. Each morning, touching the roof of his weathered log cabin, he would step out onto the porch, boots grinding against the boards, and look over the endless sweep of land that was his world. He owned no riches, had no family left, and spoke to no soul but the wind that carried dust and the cry of hawks. Letters had come, carried weeks across mountains and rivers, written by a woman he had never met. In her words, he had found hope. She promised to come, to stand by his side, to make a home out here where few dared settle. The thought of her arriving filled his nights with dreams of warmth, of laughter echoing through these barren hills. He mended the fences with extra care, polished the old iron stove inside, and even carved a rocking chair from cottonwood, imagining her resting in it as the fire cracked. Every detail of his home became touched by the dream of her presence. As the day drew near, he wore his cleanest shirt, the one he saved for church meetings years ago. Though no church stood within 100 miles now, he trimmed his beard, brushed the dust from his vest, and laid his shotgun carefully on the porch rail, not as a weapon today, but as a habit of safety. The sky was bright, the air sharp with the scent of sagebrush, and his heart raced with a boyish excitement he thought he had forgotten. But what he heard instead was thunder. At first it was faint, like a storm trapped beyond the horizon, but soon the earth trembled beneath his boots. He stepped to the edge of the porch, shading his eyes, and sawdust rising in the valley. His chest tightened. It was not a wagon. It was a sea of riders, horses pounding in unison, the sun flashing on the tips of spears. He counted a dozen, then 100, then so many he lost track. Native warriors, their painted faces stern, their long hair whipping in the wind, filled the land before him. 400 strong. The rancher's breath caught. He had waited for his bride, but instead, the valley had delivered an army. The same land he had cleared with his own aching hands and guarded with the silence of years. His heart was restless that morning, his mind turning again and again to the promise that had carried him through the long winters and the endless toil. Today, his bride was meant to arrive. Every corner of the cabin bore the marks of his careful preparation. He had smoothed the rough wooden table until it gleamed, carved a sturdy rocking chair. As he walked the porch, boots creaking against the boards, he rehearsed in his head the words he might say to her, shy greetings fumbling into laughter. For a moment, he allowed himself the dangerous sweetness of imagining her smile as she stepped from a wagon, her hand reaching for his. But the prairie never let a man forget how fragile his hopes were. A low rumble drifted across the valley, steady and growing heavier, like distant thunder rolling over the ridges. He shaded his eyes and scanned the horizon. No wagon, no gentle figure in a bonnet. Instead, a long plume of dust swirled up from the canyon floor, the kind of dust made not by wheels but by hooves, hundreds of them. His stomach sank as the sound sharpened into the unmistakable drumming of horses. One rider appeared, then another, then a flood. Dark silhouettes against the blinding sun. They spread across the valley like a living tide. Warriors astride their mounts, spears glinting, painted faces fierce and silent. The rancher's hand tightened on his shotgun, though he knew its weight was useless against such a force. His breath caught. This was no chance meeting, no passing band. He was surrounded. The porch that had moments ago felt like the threshold to a new life now seemed like the last fragile barrier between him and an overwhelming storm. The sun had climbed high and the air shimmered above the dry grasslands when Caleb, the rancher, every tick of his pocket watch stretched longer. Every creak of the boards beneath his boots reminded him of the silence that had wrapped around his ranch for years. Today, though, that silence felt different, alive, waiting, almost breathing with him. He had polished the table inside, laid out a new cloth, even set the little china cup he had traded 3 calves for, just so his bride would have something delicate to drink from. He pictured her stepping off a dusty coach, lifting her bonnet, smiling shyly as she took in the rough-hewn cabin that he had carved from the wilderness with his own hands. He saw her setting flowers in a jar, softening the hard edges of a life forged in wood and sweat. But the road remained empty, the horizon unbroken. Caleb rubbed the back of his neck. Then a faint vibration reached him. So subtle at first he thought it was the echo of his own heartbeat. He stilled, tilting his head. The sound grew a rolling thunder, not from the sky but from the earth itself. His chest tightened. It was not the creak of wagon wheels, not the measured trot of a single horse. This was heavier, relentless, a storm of hooves bearing down upon the valley. Caleb's breath caught as the ground trembled beneath his boots, and he gripped the shotgun leaning by the door. He thought of his bride, of the tender words scratched on paper that had promised a gentler life. But instead of lace and laughter, what came over the rise was a wave of riders, their faces painted, spears glinting in the hard noonlight. Line after line of warriors poured into the valley, until it seemed the land itself had come alive with muscle, leather, and steel. Caleb's throat dried as he counted, then stopped counting, realizing the truth. He was not welcoming one woman into his lonely world. He was standing alone before an army,